Our next talk is entitled NEH-funded open access Spanish language curriculum centering Blackness in Latin America. And I'm going to let these speakers introduce themselves. We have several of them. So take it away.
Hi, good morning. My name is Uju Anya, and I am at Carnegie Mellon University in the Modern Languages in the side of second language acquisition. And today we're going to talk about Black language learners studying Spanish in our colleges and universities. And then we're also going to introduce you to the curriculum that we have created with NEH funding to address some of the problems that we have found in our research on this topic. So as you can see, first of all, there is way too little research that's being done on Black learners, Black students in world languages in general. And the little bit that has been done has revealed a lot of problems that I have listed here. We won't have time to go through all of them, but you will notice there are issues with systemic inequity, racism, there are issues with mismatch between what's going on in our classrooms and at home. There are issues with gatekeeping and Black students not being admitted into prestige programs, or even having those programs like study abroad, for example, being advertised to them in the actual classes themselves, excessive focus on grammar structure, home language completely devalued, disconnect in what we're teaching in our Spanish classes, and Black identity, relevance and meaning to Black people, and certainly not tremendous representation of Afro-descendants and Black speakers of Spanish, in addition to also issues with not enough role models, Black faculty, grads, TAs, etc. Even in the texts and materials that we use, I just have a snippet here from a project that I did with Spanish teachers, evaluating and analyzing very closely some of the materials that we use in our classes. And for example, we have pictures that are supposedly representing the Hispanic world, and it looks like a picture of Sweden, more so than any other section of the Hispanic world, much less the entire Hispanic world. We have this purported race neutrality in that we are not preparing, for example, our Black students to talk about themselves, for example, describe themselves racially. They're not taught things like they can say that they're negro, negra, afrodescendiente. They're being told you can use the words like moreno or morena, but then that is also a word that can describe somebody who's white but with dark hair. So this attempt to not enter into political words, for example, I'm not exactly sure what was going on, did not yield any sort of race neutrality. It yielded erasure of Black and Afro-descendant identities. It's color evasive, and there, when you have a white hegemony in your materials, in your teaching, etc., that is not race neutral. It is white supremacist. We saw this in the materials. We also saw an experience in the activities, for example, that were done that purported to be race neutral. For example, the activity that was done to ask about the dates, right? It's a typical activity. You give a holiday and the students are supposed to say that the date in Spanish, and the date that was asked for was Independence Day. It was asked of an African-American student. African-American student is like, I'm not going to say 4th of July. It's not my Independence Day. It's the Independence Day of the people who enslaved my ancestors. So it yielded issues, problems, the perpetuating racism on the part of an instructor who was a Black man himself, who did not feel like, he himself is not a racist, but you do not have to be racist to perpetuate racism in a system that in itself is racist. Erasure is anti-Blackness. We know this when you don't represent Black people in their fullness and their entirety. We know that at least 33% or even more of Spanish speakers across the world are Black, and we do not see them represented. We do not see our Black students themselves represented in what we do. And we also see a lack of connection or interest or motivation among Black students, and we interpret it as a lack of ability. An instructor here said that that is absolutely not true. We are not reaching them. We are not engaging them. This is why they're not connected, not because they are supposedly unable. And it is racist to assume a whole group of people are simply unable. So what can we do? We have noted these problems. We propose, first of all, inquiry, assessment, and planning to teach from anti-racist, equity-minded, and inclusive approaches. I make this suggestion, and I will put in the chat article that I wrote going into much more detail about all these things that you've heard, this research, the problems, and of course the solution. Created also a protocol for the analysis of your materials, just like I did with my teachers, with these goals for anti-racist, equity-minded, and inclusive practices. So thank you very much, and I will hand it over to our next presenter, Deb.
Hi, how are you all? Thank you for having me here. I just want to talk really quick about two things, like my experience at teaching at an HBCU. My name is Deborah Gomez. I'm an assistant professor of Spanish at Florida Memorial University. This is the only HBCU here in South Florida. So I just want to talk a little bit about my experience being like a white Hispanic teaching in this setting. This is, for me, was sort of like a shock at the very beginning, because this was like the first time that I have to think about race. Was like the first time that I have to see myself as a racialized object. I'm coming from Cuba, and there is not really a lot, or at least when I used to live in Cuba, there was zero discussion about race. So I never saw myself as a racialized subject. So working in an HBCU was the first time that I started understanding, okay, in this country, I'm not really white, but back in my country, I am white. So I'm sort of like a white Hispanic, and the implications that it could have in this society, but also in an HBCU setting, that it actually could be like an obstacle. That was, it took me like a lot of time. It took me, I would say, even years to gain the trust of my colleagues. And also for my students, I realized like the second semester that it was also so difficult to get the trust of my students. And this is when this curriculum plays a fundamental role, because my whiteness could be some sort of like an obstacle, but this curriculum actually helped me to navigate this setting and actually to succeed. Why? And I'm just gonna talk about like what I do with this curriculum, what I do the first week of during the semester. I'm pretty sure that since I was connecting, I couldn't hear my colleague, Dr. Anja, her entire presentation. But one of the things that we do, and probably she already mentioned this, is that we talk about linguistic varieties and translanguaging, the importance of translanguaging, and validate our students' languages. So majority of my students, they have a very rich and diverse linguistic repertoire. My students speak at least 2 linguistic varieties or other languages, African American languages, Bahamian English, but also what they call back in the Bahamas, proper English. I have students that speak Haitian Creole, but also French and English, different varieties. I also have students from other islands in the Caribbean, not only the Bahamas, and they could have come with the Jamaican patois or the English from the Virgin Islands. Yet they do not feel that any of these languages is good enough, unfortunately. When they come to my classroom, all of them, majority of them, when we discuss about the linguistic varieties, and they start actually noticing that their repertoire is so rich, but still they feel that it's not good enough because they've been getting this constant message in their English classroom and also in their foreign language classroom that those languages are not good enough, that the languages are not proper. Oh, Haitian Creole, even if it's the language that the Haitians will use in their daily life, oh, it's not good enough when you do certain ceremonies or like important social events, like you go to a Haitian wedding, oh no, here it has to be French. So, and the same happens like, for example, with Bahamian English. Oh, back with your grandmother and your family and your friends, Bahamian English is totally fine, but here at school, no, here you have to speak proper English. So when we discuss, and especially this proper English and quote marks, when we discuss this in the classroom, and I just made them understand that this is wrong, because what really pains me is that a lot of my students, they've been getting this message to the point that they believe it. So they come to my classroom and they already think that their linguistic varieties, the language that nurtured them, is not good enough, it's not proper, it's broken. So when we start this discussion the first week of the semester in the classroom, and I tell them how wrong these beliefs are, how this belief could affect their learning, and we have this whole discussion about the purpose of language, which is communication, and what is totally wrong thinking that this variety is good and this variety is bad, always depending on the context, is sort of like a life-changing. Like I can
Dr. Gomez, I
tell you.
apologize to disturb, but
No
we
more
have
time.
very little time.
Okay, so well, anyways.
And Dr. Brault has to present right now. We have 3 minutes
perfect.
left.
But well,
Thank
I guess that my message went across. Thank you so much. I'm sorry about that.
Melissa, you are not muted. You're muted.
Thank you. I'm going to put in the chat the link to our fully open access curriculum. And just briefly, this project is the very first in the nation to create a Spanish first-year curricula designed for the ethno-racial needs of Black language learners, starting in the HBCU setting, what Deborah just described. And I'd like to really highlight how critical the scholarship is of Dr. Anya. She's the very reason for which this all came about, because we were seeing such a drastic decrease in Black student enrollment and teachers struggle to really engage with their learners. So briefly, I'm going to talk about the curriculum. It is fully task-based and conducted upon a needs analysis. So all of this is based off of the students' real-world needs. And I want to say that the #1 cited need in the Spanish language by the HBCU student was to help others. We also utilize, if you'll see in the curriculum, fully task-based lesson plans, the Ellis model, the Willis model. Sorry, everyone, I have my little one with me, and the Noonan model. And we utilize, therefore, complete tasks and task-based methodology to give teachers these plans. Another thing that is unique about our curriculum is the community leaders. So here online, when you go to our curriculum, you will see all of the units, and they all feature a community leader. So you will find the entire task-based lesson plan, objectives and materials, all of our videos and tasks, and then community leaders that critically show our students examples of Black community leaders, Black students, as well as teachers who are highlighting how and why Spanish has been beneficial to them. And then the last thing I'll demonstrate is critically how we've ordered and designed all materials based off of means going from simple to cognitively complex. So we hope that this can be a helpful curriculum to you all in your materials, that you can use it however you deem fit, and we wish you the best. Thank you so much.
Let's see. I've been looking at people are thanking you for making this open, of course, and they're also noting that the question of race is not just a question in the Spanish classrooms, but of course in the French classroom, as you alluded to, in other languages. I'm going to throw this one back out at you. There was a little bit of discussion early on, as Dr. Anya was talking about the concept of erasure, and somebody asked a question about, well, but all races are mixed, right? And
I would like to address that question. I did not have a chance to in the chat.
Yeah.
There are people in the Hispanic world who are Black and who call themselves Black, and who or Afrodescendiente, and who recognize very much that they are such. And those people number very, very highly. These are people who recognize their descendants, where they come from, and how they actively contribute to the Hispanic world as principal cultural agents in the Hispanic world. The ideology of mestizaje does a lot of harm and erasure of Black people. When we say things, well, everybody is mixed, so nobody is anything. There are Black people in Latin America and across the Spanish-speaking world, and here in the United States as well.
Right. Thank you for addressing that, because I thought that needed to be talked about. I'm really sorry. This is such a rich curriculum and wonderful project, but we're going to have to set up for the next one.